How's it rockin', Dween Nation? This is the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your co-host, Justin Paez, and today we start a tradition. After last week, I did a March Madness predictions, and I love to do it, and it did pretty well, and I'm excited to come back and do it and make it an every week thing, every weekend. I will make this until March Madness starts. So I'm here to do another bracketology via the Ken Palm bracketology analysis. It is up to date as of today. And so we're going to run through it. Now, before we start, I'm not in my humble abode with my soundboard. So the sound's slightly different. It'll be better next week. I'm just not at home. But I wanted to do this episode, and let's just dive into the predictions. And we're going to start at the top, as per usual, with the Duke Blue Devils. They take on Nebraska Omaha. Last time I think they took on Marist. Now they get Nebraska Omaha. It does not matter. Duke is going to move on. They're one of the favorites, obviously, and they've been playing really well. They get a matchup today at Clemson, so let's see how they fare there. That'll be a really good matchup. There's some good basketball games on today. Tennessee right now is whooping OU. Sorry, OU fans, it's not a way to start your Saturday morning. Oregon, Michigan State's a great game on today. Also, Bama at Arkansas. Arkansas is kind of on fire as of this week. So let's see. They're at home. Let's see if they can take down the big dogs. We got Texas A&M, my Aggies at Missouri. That should be a crazy game at 2:30 Central Time. We got Mississippi State at Georgia. That's an underrated great game. And then we end the night with Texas Tech and Arizona. So a lot of great games. Obviously, things will change as we keep going. But as of right now, this is what we're rolling with in bracketology. We started with Duke winning. Gonzaga, Ohio State. I'm going with Gonzaga to move on to the next round. UCLA at Yale. UCLA's been playing pretty good as of late. I really like what they got going on there. I'm going to pick them over Yale. I know Yale, they had a good run last year, and a lot of people think that they could be a good favorite to upset some teams. But I'm going to go with the UCLA Bruins. Then we got Kentucky and Lipscomb. Kentucky's been kind of on a downward angle at the moment, but I'm not too Lipscomb I do not know too much about, so I'm going to go with Kentucky. Maryland and Wake Forest. I think this game would be a really interesting watch. Man, I think Maryland lost the other day, which could make things somewhat tougher, but they had a good win last week, so I'm going to roll with them in this matchup to move on. I know I've had no upsets yet, but we'll see. They will come because it will happen. Kansas and Cleveland State. It might happen right here. You know what? Oh, Kansas pulled off a big win at home over Iowa State. I'm going to keep Kansas in it. UConn versus Oklahoma. I'm watching Oklahoma right now, and they're getting tossed around at home. I know Tennessee's a really good team, but I'm going with UConn, especially even though they lost last night at home to St. John's. St. John's is a formidable team, so UConn's still in a good place for me, and I get them moving on. Florida and Towson. I'm going with Florida. Despite their tough loss last weekend against Tennessee, I think they're still on a good path. Then we got Tennessee, who's seemingly on fire now. I'm going with the Volunteers. Then we got Clemson and West Virginia. I know this prediction could change. If Clemson pulls off a big win today, I might be on that Clemson train. Man. But do I go West Virginia? They've been solid. They haven't been like too crazy great. I'm going to go with Clemson. I'm going to go with Clemson to stay in it. Get the orange on orange game next week or in March Madness. St. John's McNeese State. St. John's is on another level right now. I'm going with St. John's. Their last two wins, Marquette and UConn, great wins for that team. Rick Pitino's on fire. Wisconsin and Samford. I'm going with Samford. Samford's been a team, they were last year being discussed as a team that could upset teams, and they didn't. But now they get a good matchup here. I think they could do well against Wisconsin. Missouri and Nebraska. Missouri, they've been on fire right now. I know they lost by 4 points at Tennessee. That's not too much of an L in the morale standpoint, I think, for this team. And now they get a game against the Aggies at home. They're in a good spot. Iowa State, though, they've been on the downward spiral. I'm going to keep them going, though, through the first round. Oregon and Georgia. Oregon's been really back and forth. Right now, they're actually beating Michigan State, but on the road too, of all things. But gosh, Georgia's been really solid too. I'm gonna go with Oregon though to move on. Then we got Texas A&M at Central Connecticut. I'll go with the Aggies to move on there. We keep going down. Auburn versus American. I'm going with Auburn. Creighton and Baylor. Pop Isaacs is out for the year. I feel like you're going to hear that a lot when we get closer to March Madness. He's one of their top players, but he's out for the year. So I'm going with Baylor to move on. Memphis and George Mason. Wow, this could be a good upset here. I'm going to go with George Mason, pull off the upset over Memphis. Then we got Michigan State and Arkansas State. I'll have Michigan State pull it off there. Michigan or not at Vanderbilt. Michigan versus Vanderbilt. Michigan's been doing pretty well this year. Vanderbilt's kind of been on a skid. Yeah, I'm not going to go with Vandy. I'm going to go with Michigan to move on. Marquette and Jacksonville State. Marquette, man, I'm glad they're kind of moving off that 2 seed, because if they were up there, they would be one of my upsets for sure. And I might have them. Jacksonville State doesn't really move me. I'll keep Marquette in it for now, but they're not somebody that I think is going to make a deep run this year. That's not the team that they are, unfortunately for them. Mississippi State and Utah State. Mississippi State has also been a team that hasn't been very good as of late. They're still ranked, but they've had some tough losses. They lost by 27 to Missouri in their last game. They get a game at Georgia today. I'll go with Mississippi State to stay in it. And Houston, of course, has been really good, and they'll stay up there. Alabama will move on as we jump into the Midwest region. St. Mary's and New Mexico. That's a really good matchup. That might be the best matchup of round one. Wow. St. Mary's plays it slow, and I think that's what's going to get them to move on. Ole Miss versus UC Irvine. Ole Miss I was really off of until they had a really big win against Kentucky where they put up near 100 on them. I'll keep Ole Miss in this. Then we got Arizona and Akron. I really like Arizona. I know they can be hit or miss, but Arizona, when they're hot, they're dangerous. Then we got Illinois and Drake. Illinois just lost to Rutgers, shorthanded Rutgers. So I'm going to go with Drake to pull off a big upset there. Texas Tech and Utah Valley. I love some Texas Tech this year. They are playing as good as anybody right now in college basketball. Then we got Louisville and Texas. And wow, as much as I want to say no to Texas, I think they would pull off that game. I've seen flashes. They've had some really good games, also obviously some losses, but they're moving up. They're moving up, especially over the last couple of weeks. Purdue and UNC Asheville. We're going with Purdue there. So round one is complete. We're going to jump back to the top here in the East with Duke and Gonzaga. I'm going with Duke to keep moving on. Then we got UCLA and Kentucky. And I'm going to go, I think Mark Pope in his first year is they're going to do something. Just obviously they match up with Duke in the next round, but I think they move on a couple rounds. They really need a good seed, like a good matchup in that first round or two, and they get that here, I think. So they're going to move on. Maryland and Kansas. I'm going with Maryland over Kansas. We'll take the 6 there. Kansas, I know they had a good win, but I need to see a little bit more as we get closer to March. Then we got UConn and Florida, and this game could be tight, but I'm going to go with Florida to move on there. Tennessee and Clemson, I'm going with Tennessee. The ACC has just been not super good this year, besides, of course, Duke, which makes me think that Duke might not be set for the title. Because their competition has just been not as good this year. ACC can be good in years, but just not this one. It hasn't been super spicy. And then we got St. John's and Sanford. I'm going with St. John's. Mizzou, Iowa State. I'm going with Missouri. Keep them moving on. Oregon and Texas A&M. Funny enough, these two teams have faced off this year. I believe it was the second or third game of the season. So it was early in the season, and Oregon won. But I'm going to go with the Aggies to move on there. To me, this is their year. If they're going to try to make a deep run in March Madness, this will be the year they do so, because they got all of their top guys, their seniors, graduate students. So they're built for this season to make a run. Auburn and Baylor, I'm going with Auburn. They're playing obviously the best in the league. They're the number one team. But yeah, they're just not losing anybody, especially in SEC play. Then we got George Mason and Michigan State. And I'm going to go with the upset here and get George Mason to drop the 4 seed. They've beaten a 4 and a 5, and they are in the Sweet 16. against Auburn. We'll see how that goes. Michigan and Marquette. I'm going with Michigan. Like I said, Marquette doesn't move me um, this year. I think they're going to continue to drop. They might drop to a 5 seed by the time March Madness rolls around. We will see. Mississippi State and Houston. This game would be a dogfight, but obviously I'm going to go with the Cougars. Then we got Bama, St. Mary's. I'm going with Bama. It's literally, this is a funny matchup because it's the fastest team in college basketball versus the slowest team. But who will come out on top? I'll go with the Roll Tide. I'll go Roll Tide on that one. Then we go with Ole Miss and Arizona, and I'm going to go with Arizona here to move on to make a really good Sweet 16 matchup with Alabama and Arizona. Drake and Texas Tech. That is unfortunate because I really like Drake in this tournament, but they get Texas Tech, who is on a hot streak and a team that I think is built for March this year. Then we got Texas and Purdue. Man, silly enough, I could see Texas pulling this off here. Ah, man, I would hate to do it too, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Texas over Purdue. I've seen Purdue. They've been doing well as of the last month or so. It's just they just now they lost their best player in Zach Edey, and I know they're playing well, but it's just not. I just don't feel it from Purdue. They usually fall short in March Madness. Besides last year where they made it to the championship. Then we got Duke and Kentucky. I'm going with Duke to move on. Maryland and Florida. I'm going with Florida. So we got the 1 and 2. Tennessee and St. John's. This is where I think the first 1 seed goes down, and St. John's is in the Elite 8. Then we got Missouri and Texas A&M, which funny is happening today in Missouri. But I'm going to go with the Aggies to win that one in their Part 2 matchup, unless they meet up in the SEC tournament. Then we got Auburn, George Mason. I'm going with Auburn. Michigan and Houston. I'm going with Houston. And then we got Bama and Arizona. And this is actually where I'm going to have the second 1 seed go down. And Bama will lose to Arizona in the Sweet 16. And Arizona moves on. They got a big 3 there in Arizona with that I really like. And I think that's going to keep them going. Texas Tech and Texas. I'll go with Texas Tech. The Red Raiders will match up with Arizona in the Elite 8. Then we jump back up to the top, Duke and Florida. And last, gosh, do I go Duke here? Yeah, Duke. The big thing with me for Duke is usually they're headlined by freshmen, and that's kind of why they fall off because freshmen don't have that experience. But they have a really good mesh of young, really skilled talent and some veterans of college basketball. So I'm gonna go with Duke there. St. John's and Texas A&M. I'm going with the Aggies to move on to the Final Four. Auburn and Houston, this matchup would be, to me, almost essentially like the championship. I would love to see this game. Obviously, it happened earlier in the year, and Auburn pulled off the W. But do I go Houston here? Both teams are known for not getting it done late in the tournament. That's what we got. I'm going to go with Auburn to move on there. So we got A&M, Auburn, Duke, and the final team here is Texas Tech. They're in my Final Four again. And then if we move down to the bottom left here, you see the Final Four as it stands: Duke and Texas A&M, Auburn and Texas Tech. And I'm gonna go with it being Duke versus Texas Tech or Auburn. Let's not do 2-1s against each other. I think Texas Tech finds themselves in the championship match, and I'm gonna stay. As I was last week, nothing has really changed in my mind for me to switch off of Duke, and I'm going to keep them as the champions in this bracketology on February 8th of 2025. Some great games today. Obviously, we're going to keep going through it. Next week, you'll get one of these. Maybe my mind will change because some of these I changed. Like Texas now has jumped up big time. Also, Marquette is falling off big time. I'm a big fan. George Mason. I really wanted Drake made it, I believe, to my Elite 8 last week. But with that matchup against Texas Tech in the second round, I don't love that. I see that Pittsburgh's fallen off big time. They're not even – and then St. John's up here in the Elite 8 I think is big. But, yeah, Dwayne Nation, that is the March Madness predictions for today. Come back next week. Watch this fully. Let me know what you think. Is Duke – is that a crazy call? Is that too obvious? What are some other upsets that you see through this bracket? But let me know everything you think about it. And yeah, if you keep liking it, keep watching it, I can keep making more of it. Me and my brother Genoa, we are on top of it with the Super Bowl, which is happening tomorrow. And then just more NFL content, more basketball, NBA. We had a whole episode about the NBA, the trades, Luca, De'Aaron Fox, Jimmy Butler, all of it. So check that out. But thank you guys for listening. And as my brother Genoa always says, thanks for watching and peace.